You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. All right, folks, our weekly Education Matters segment sponsored by School Choice is the Black Choice. COVID has just impacted everything in our society. No place where it has been even crazier has been in education. My brother's a teacher. Two of my sisters are teachers. I sit here in our family group chat and I see their comments about, some parents at my sister's school. They actually created outdoor classrooms. Now you got school districts determining whether we go to some kids in school, some kids online. Let's go all online. You look at where New York is. I mean, it's sort of just all over the place. Parents are fed up. But the other issue, and it's just real, schools are also caught in a bind because you have some people like Trump and Rand Paul and others who are saying, no, kids got to be in school. But then you got others who are saying, but wait a minute, what all of a sudden if they are so spreading coronavirus? Well, my next guest is a longtime educator. He is president of the Harlem Children's Zone and, of course, also being highly recommended for the position of Secretary of Education in a Biden administration. Yes, I'm going to ask him about that, but we welcome Dr. Geoffrey Canada to Roland Martin Unfiltered. Doc, how you doing?
Hey, Roland, it's been a while, my man. Haven't seen you in a while. In these crazy times, look, all I can say honestly, my family's good. I'm in good health. The rest of the world, I'm real worried.
Let's talk about in terms of where we are when it comes to these kids and education, man. It is so difficult because, again, I've got family who are teachers. I've also had my wife and I raising two of my nieces. They're 16 years old. And so they're going to school online. I walked into their room today and I'm sitting there like, okay, y'all laying in bed in school. We got a classroom set up at the house as well. I got another niece who's a sophomore at Howard University. She came here thinking they were going to be, having labs at least once a week. They've been all online, so she's going to school online. And then we have to worry about the folks who don't have good Wi-Fi, who don't have computers, who don't have pads, who don't have those resources. I mean, this is absolutely exposing the vast inequities in our educational system.
I mean, you couldn't be more correct. In New York City alone, they said there's 60,000 children who can't get online because either they don't have devices or they don't have internet connection. But even if you can get online, the quality of the instruction children are getting is absolutely horrible. And it was horrible in the spring. And I was yelling and screaming and saying, look, we got to take this thing seriously because we're going to shut back down in the fall. We didn't take it seriously. It doesn't make any sense. How are parents going to go to work if your child is in school 2 days and home 3 days? This thing is a real disaster. And, I've started calling Roland that when this vaccine comes out, that we put teachers right after the healthcare workers and we vaccinate the teachers and we get them back into the schools. We have to worry about the most vulnerable children who, if they get COVID, will really get very sick, and worry about our high school kids. But we gotta get these kids back connected. They are suffering. They are not getting an education, and we're sowing the seeds to the next generation's inequality right in front of our eyes.
And so when we talk about where we are, first of all, what you just laid out, one of the problems is that the Trump folks, let's be perfectly honest, they kept downplaying it. And I think a lot of these people kept thinking, oh yeah, August. I kept telling folk in April, I said, I'm gonna tell y'all something right now. Y'all can hang up August. And I was saying then, y'all can forget the spring of 2021. I said, guys, at the absolute earliest, we're back in the classroom in fall 2021. But you're absolutely right. They kept giving folks false hope. And then by giving false hope, they weren't preparing for the long term.
Well, you're right about this. You could not handle this situation worse, in my opinion. First of all, we know the lack of federal leadership. Donald Trump, the vice president, what they have done has cost at least 100,000 lives, at least. And you know, we know that things could have happened to protect folks. It wasn't done. They just simply said, let's send these folks out there. It's going to be fine. And here's the rub, Mark. We know, Roland, who kids are going to get hurt, whose parents are going to get hurt, who lost their jobs, who didn't get the PPP when they were giving out the money. It's all in our community. And I think that we, as a collective, have got to go in and say to this new administration, not only do we have to start schools, but we need to do some major investing in these communities because we've exposed what 50, 75, 100 years of disinvestment in Black communities has produced. It has produced a set of circumstances where we are the ones who are getting sick, who are losing our jobs, who aren't able to gather the wealth from buying homes and other stuff because of redlining the history. And it's time for us to really try and make sure we begin to mediate those kinds of issues and remedy these situations. Education is part of this. It's a critical part, but we need a much more comprehensive view of education in this country these days.
Quadricos, you're a professor at George Washington University. AV universities have been dealing with this as well. So your question for Geoffrey Canada.
Dr. Canada, thank you for joining us. I've long been an admirer. What would you say is a viable solution, particularly for those families who cannot afford to, particularly those caretakers, those moms, those dads, those single parents who cannot afford necessarily to allow their child to stay back home while they have to work, but we know unfortunately that the child isn't learning. What do you think is a viable solution? Because there are many in the DC area, particularly in the Southeast, that is a grave concern, right? We see a lot of unlearning going on, and we know, of course, that for our children particularly will be left behind further. So what necessarily steps, be it policy or anecdotal, need to take place to sort of rectify and address that?
I mean, this is a great question because I wish this was just DC. You name any of our urban centers, you name the rural places. If you don't have real money, your child is not getting an education in America today, and it's traumatizing a whole generation of kids. So I think the answer is we've got to get these schools open. We need to get these teachers vaccinated. Look, they said they can start vaccinating people in December. Let's get every teacher, 3.7 million teachers, maybe another million support staff. They said they've got 20 million doses of the vaccine. Let's get our teachers vaccinated and open up our schools. We know the infection rate among children is lower. It's more the adults who are getting infected. If kids do, it's not quite as serious, but we have to protect the most vulnerable kids and their families. But we got to deal with this thing. What's going on right now is a total disaster for our community. Our kids are not learning. This hybrid thing is you go to school sometimes, you don't. Any of us who have technology, you know half the time the technology doesn't work. You can't miss 3 or 4 days of school a week because your device is not connecting to the internet and think you're getting an education. We've got to solve this. But my answer is not just to open up the school. Our kids are going to be so far behind. We have to think about how we surround them with the kind of supports our children are going to need. Look, they are suffering trauma right now. They're going to have mental health issues. Just imagine that you're worried about killing your grandfather. You can't be with your friends because you know there's something out there that's killing people. You listen to the ambulances. This is trauma for kids. And this trauma is not going to go away in a week or a month or a year. So we're going to have to surround these kids with a comprehensive set of supports. And I'm calling on the Biden administration for a massive investment in these communities to help support the education going on, because simply schools and having teachers go in and principals is not going to make up for what's happened. These kids have already lost a year of education, in some cases two.
Niambi?
Yeah, so you actually hit on something that I was going to ask Dr. Canada, which is how do we help these students who have lost so much so quickly? And what do you think the long term consequences? How do we get to the catch up phase? Will they ever be able to catch up? And then what kinds of accommodations do we need to make for that? And then I was going to ask you to address these other kinds of collateral damage that are happening to these children outside of learning their social skills and their social development and other kinds of things.
Yeah. So look, the we know about ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. We know that when kids grow up in households where there's domestic violence, substance abuse, poor mental health, loss of an apartment, we know the impact of the stress on that impacts these kids into their 20s and 30s. If you want to understand a lot of the health disparities that happens in our community, it is because of the constant stress from not just from family stuff, but from racism, from worrying about the police, from the fear of losing your home or your apartment. This has a long-term impact. We have never in our community had a whole generation of kids subjected to 7 months of toxic stress, unrelenting. And we're going to have to really provide a different way of thinking about school. We've got to bring in mental health supports. We've got to train folks how to talk to kids. We got to look out for the signs of depression, the signs of suicide, the signs of kids disassociating, don't want to go back to school because they're traumatized and they're scared. We've got to actively look for the children and not wait for them to start acting out in ways that are self-destructive. So I think we've got to rethink education. That's my thought. It has to be school, but we have to get the mental health supports in here. Now, there's a whole bunch of other things that's going on. School is the place that we learn how to interact. We learn how to get along. We've broken a lot of the social bonds that kids develop. And I think that we have to intentionally think about how we rebuild that sense of community among children. Remember, they have been taught to stay away from one another. No, you know our community. Everybody wants to give a pound, a hug. What's up? What's up? All of that is off right now because it's been taught to be dangerous. And we're going to have to re-teach our kids how to socially engage in appropriate ways. While this is going on in lots of our communities, the violence is going up. The murder rates are going up. That our kids are being traumatized from another end. So we got to focus on getting our communities safe and keeping these communities safe so kids don't grow up thinking, you know what, it's every person got to fend for themselves out here because no one's there to protect us. So I think we have to think about this thing much more comprehensively. After school, evenings, weekends, summertime, we need to stay with our kids during all of those times so we can begin to rebuild these supports they need and the skills they need so we can help them catch up. And it's going to take us about 3 years to catch the kids up from where they are right now. If we do this comprehensive thing, it's still going to take about 3 years to get our kids caught back up from having lost this year to 2 years of education.
Michael.
First of all, brother, thanks for the work that you do. I've been watching you for years. My question is regarding parents who are working from home and their children are going to school at the kitchen table. Do you have any tips for parents who are trying to juggle this and keep the children engaged in school? I have a friend who has he turned 8 today, 8-year-old and a 12-year-old. And it's hard trying to keep them engaged and the parent is trying to do their work for their job and then monitor the children in between classes and keep them on schedule and keep them engaged, keep them interested. Any tips for parents how to navigate this?
It's a great question because, parents are suddenly thrust into this role of being like the teacher and none of them have been trained. So here's the first thing I would say.
Exactly.
You have to set up a space, right? A defined area. And you have to set it up in a way that you limit the kid's ability to be distracted. So the worst place to put the kid is like in the middle of a round table where they can see everything going on around them. You want to get them in an area where their focus can be guided in a way. And you want to get them their own stuff, a little chair to sit on, something to act like a desk, their own pencils and pens set up in a place that they always can find them. And then, as a parent, you need to let your child know, you know what, I'm going to check back in with you in 1 hour, and I want you focused. So, and then you need to check back in so that that child constantly feels there's some support and adult guidance and attention focused on them. So those are some of the things I think we need to do. If your child is really struggling with focusing and paying attention, I would say that what you need to do is start them off in small pieces. So if you know after 45 minutes this kid is drifting off, they're not, well, set a timer and then intervene and get that kid off that screen for 5 or 6 minutes. You can look at it and keep an eye on what's going on, and then let them move around and get some, because it's unnatural for kids to sit still constantly. How many times have kids raised their hands? I want to go to the bathroom. They don't really have to go to the bathroom. They just need to get up and do something. That's different when you're in your home and someone is constantly looking at you. So I think we have to plan breaks for kids, and then occasionally just do something fun. Just, do some jumping jacks, play 10 minutes worth of a card game, do something that breaks up that learning day, gets their brain off of it. We know you can't focus, even adults, for more than half an hour, 45 minutes at a time. Having a kid sit for hours staring at a screen, that's not learning. It's not healthy. It's not the way that kids should learn. So the parents have to break it up. And if you can time it so that you can work it around your work schedule, so it's not right in the middle of a meeting, but your kid knows that you're going to come and you're going to do something fun if they just hang in there, I think that's going to help a bit.
Jeffrey, I asked you this question here. Of course, we talked about what's next in terms of this Biden administration. The group of African Americans who are advocating for a black Secretary of Education. The question is, and your name is one of the ones they mentioned out there. Would you want to do that?
So, Roland, first of all, I know this group of educators. These are very serious black men and women who care about our kids, are out there fighting for them every day. One of the big issues we care about is we want great schools. We don't care if they're traditional public schools, if they're charter schools, if they're parochial schools. We want great schools for our kids because we don't have the time to wait for them to fix this thing. If you have a kid in the 3rd grade, you can't say, well, a couple of years from now, I think maybe your school will be okay. So until then, we're just going to sort of have to do with this. That doesn't make any sense. So there are a group of us who are saying, let's just make sure we're giving our community every opportunity possible. Because if you have money, you have options. You can send your kid to a private school. You can send your kid to a parochial school. You can pay for that. If you don't have money, you are really stuck. And if you're stuck in one of those places where you don't have high quality education, you have no choice for your child. And we know what some of that looks like. So I want to be in that discussion. I want to be in that debate. But just for me, I've started a new job, Roland. It's called the William Julius Wilson Institute. William Julius Wilson, a really famous African-American sociologist, started his career in Chicago, then went to Harvard. He's written about this issue of poverty, and his 2 books that I really highly recommend is The Truly Disadvantaged and When Work Disappears. Those books changed my way of thinking about poverty because what Bill Wilson was saying is, look, we keep focusing on the symptoms, but what happens when people don't have work and they don't have jobs and they can't pay to take care of their families, you get all these other social ills. You get the alcoholism, you get the substance abuse, you get the domestic violence, you get the child abuse, you get the criminal justice involvement. And it doesn't matter if you're black in Chicago or if you're in rural Appalachia, when those jobs leave, these same problems come. So we believe that the answer for our community is to get our folks prepared with high skills to get good, decent jobs. And I just came out of retirement to start this new institute, and I'm going to be trying to go out and save an additional 1 million kids in this country over the course of the next 5 years. So that's my main focus right now. But I support the group of African Americans who are saying we need to have our community needs to be reckoned with. Look, I'm going to say something, Roland. I don't know. Maybe people think this is controversial. Maybe they don't. There's one reason that President-elect Biden is going to be in the White House on January 20th. is because African Americans went out with COVID and everything else, and they voted that man in. And when he got the help in South Carolina that turned his whole primary campaign around, that was African Americans. So I think our community have some bills that are coming due from this administration, and education ought to be one of those places that we get special attention.
Oh, well, let me be real clear. There are a number of things that are due. Trust me. And I'm going to sit there. In the words of that great financial planner, Frank Lucas, I'm going to get that money. Dr. Geoffrey Canada, always a pleasure, man. I appreciate it. We'll have you back soon.
All right, Roland. Appreciate it, brother. Keep it up.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much. All right. Back to that Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one.
Public employees had make getting through this pandemic possible. So one, thank you for your service. Thank you.
You're asking me, family. This is our moment. This is our moment to show what the green mean machine is made of. For the next week and a half, we've got to show our power and make our voices heard every single day. We will mobilize, we will organize, and we will win.
Oh, ask me.
Oh, ask me.
Fire it up.